because the wealthy French and German vacation in Sicily. So they pick up their language before English. And today it's mandatory that in the schools, they teach English. So my little cousins, she tells me though, just enough to get by to pass the grades. So it's still a little lazy with English, they call it. Rome and other parts of Europe is not a problem really much with English. But in Sicily, it's still a little issue. But with technology, we got these apps you can go to and you could pick up the language fairly quick. And you got your hand language also, so that's cool. But anyway, one of the things that really amazes me at 6,000 miles away, I was talking to Mr. Piazza just a few minutes ago that I'm good friends with so-called politicians, and my family's full-blooded Contessa. I got friends in Contessa, but Corleone, Cacamo, and my grandfather's from Cefalu. There's no crime. I mean, the police chief pulls up in a scooter. I'm drinking espresso with the mayor. I say, "You got a jail around here?" There's no crime. Actually, we most probably have more problems with tourists maybe getting out of control than there. They have so much pride. But of course, train stations, bus stations, airports, you got to watch yourself regardless. When you're in the little villages of Sicily, it's an island. It's the largest island in the Mediterranean, and it's separated by the boot. The Strait of Messina separates it. But there's a million little villages, but the problem with the villages up north, in the mountains, that when the young people grow up, there's two colleges, Catania and Palermo. So when they get their education, they're most probably not coming back home. So if you would visit these little mountain villages, there's one or two little bars. A bar is a place where you can have beer, you can have lasagna, it's called a bar. They might have one in the little town, very quaint, beautiful little historical little towns. But the young people have to move out for work. So if you're near water in Sicily, there's seafood, there's tourist industry. And Cefalu has to be one of the leaders. Rick Steves, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Rick Steves. He travels throughout Europe. He's the #1 European travel critic in the world, period. He says, not long ago, one of his stories, I've been to a place called Cefalu. I've been all over Sicily. Taormina, Siracusa, all these places. But I fell in love with a little town called Cefalu. So again, it's cobblestone streets, shake hands, you kiss and hug. I've never seen any crime in the city, and my cousins are there. And of course, there's a certain element of crime when you say crime. I was talking to Mr. Piazza, I think we just talked about it. I said, or Eric, we were talking, I said, I was in Rome. And I got friends that have a boutique hotel by the Vatican, and very fortunate there, and the girl from Russia says, "Mr. Matassa, there's no crime?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's kind of invisible type crime." He said, "I thought so." So to make this story going back a little bit, I was on a jet one of the trips, and he said that the boat people coming from Libya, they got so many coming into Palermo. Now this is one of the stories I'm telling you real quick, right? That it might change the culture less than 10 years from now. And the culture is so strong in Sicily because it's separated by the Strait of Messina. They kind of do their thing. The only way you get there is by air or boat. You can't drive over there. So I said, "Well, what's the deal with all these boat people coming in?" He says, "I don't know what you're talking about." And after he goes 15, 20 minutes, we're going down the road. He's got a business. He says, "Oh, David, I see business." I say, "What?" "Yeah, he's a business." "What you mean?" He said, "He love it." "What you mean he love it?" He said, "The Italian government gives €50 a day, take these people. And he might give them 30 or 20, whatever it is. And he put them in these buildings. And if the government shuts it down, they put them, they might not boat to Malta, but then they could take their turf over in Sicily, So then the Pope steps in. This is a story that they tell. When the Pope steps in, hey, Sicilians are there to get change lifestyle over there in Sicily. So then they tell me, they sent the Pope, the message that said, "Pope, look, we love you and all this stuff, but you got the smallest country in the world. And you got Swiss guards 24/7. And then things kind of calm down because, the Sicilian reputation. But it's beautiful. And it's like anything else in the world. You always have some issues with certain things, but the people accept you. And like I said, the culture is different from Italy. The foods are different. The clothes is different. At one time, King Norman, he came in with his ships into Sicily. In 1130, there was a big storm, 1129 I think it was, and he prayed to God that if he could be saved with his fleet of ships, he would build a cathedral in his honor. He landed on the beach of Cefalu. So today there's a World Heritage Cathedral in Cefalu. And to go back to Europe, in case you haven't been, you got temples and places with 2,000 years plus, ruins and all, which is truly amazing. I mean, this country is less than 300 years old. So with that said, the society started, like Eric mentioned, 1887. I found some memorabilia that Sal Serio gave me. He ran the library in Kenner, genealogy. He was heads up and personal friends with myself and Charles Marsala. 1987 was the 100-year anniversary of the Cefalutana Society in New Orleans. They had less than 50 people. The Contessa Society is next to us. They're down to about 60 people. Excuse me. Our organization today, we're very fortunate. We have over 180 members. Truly amazing, and we're very thankful for that. So some of our benefits is that we have a scholarship for Mother Cabrini School. We give a scholarship every year. By the way, Mother Cabrini is the first Italian-American saint. The school there, we affiliate with, we have a Sal Serio spaghetti bash every year at Cabrini's. And in case you never saw the movie Cabrini, please do so. Truly, truly beautiful movie. Of course, I never had enough time to talk to you about, but Mother Cabrini was a saint of immigrants. And the way the Italians and the Sicilians were being taken care of in New York City was, like she said, the rats are doing better than the immigrants from Italy in the sewage down below in New York. But the rest is the movie, so if you haven't seen it, I would advise you to try to see Cabrini. With that said, like I said, Cefalu is about 14,000 people. It's 45 minutes from Palermo. The food and culture is different. You're not going to go to Rome or Venice or anywhere else and get Sicilian food. That's just how it is, so it's different. Basically, all the regions are like that. And it's the province of Palermo. The rules are a little different. Sicilians and Italians, mostly business people, they tell you some things, but not everything. Let's just say that, So they're very good business people. They don't put their business on the street. And it's very, like I said, Sicily, really a place of hardly any crime. So the society, again, we're the oldest one bloodline. We're very successful. If you want to join, I have the membership here. There's a website also. Every year we have the Festa, which the Festa is our Savior Jesus Christ. In Cefalu, it's a 1-week celebration. And one of the biggest events of the celebration is they put a grease pole out over the water. And it's got grease on it. And a winner has to go out on the pole to grab that flag at the end. The flag is a picture of our Savior Jesus Christ. Now, it's a fishing community, which most of you in Sicily around the water is all fishing villages. The only way you could be a member to walk that pole is from a family of a fishing family. That's it, the only way. It's been over 700 years an event that took place. It still takes place every year, August the 6th. So we hold our festa as accordingly as close as August 6th as possible. We'd go to Andre's restaurant in New Orleans. He had sold. We used to go there for over 20-something years. Now with the Chateau Country Club, and the Yanni family owned that, and that's where we go to a big festive celebration we celebrate every year. So, like I said, Cefalu is a quaint little town, cobblestone streets, real friendly. All the business is very fortunate, very, very successful. There's a Club Med, which, a lot of foreigners, especially Russia, comes over, Club Med, and depending on the world thermometer, things change a little bit, but it's very successful. I think it's #1 Club Med in the world. And for a small little town of 14,000, there's a historic district. The water's crystal clear. Last time I was with my family, we rented a boat, a big boat, we went swimming. Don't worry about the jellyfish, my cousins tell me. Don't worry about the sharks, David. There's no sharks, which is basically true. It's just perfect. It really is. There's a stream underneath that goes to an old historical washroom where they had stones where the old people used to wash their clothes. It's still there, it's still active, but they don't use it. But it's a stream, so you get in the water off the beach. I never experienced anything like it. Number one, the sand was the hottest sand I ever walked in my life. So what's the deal with this? David, it's volcanic sand. Okay, it's volcanic sand, okay. Get in the water, it's like a washing machine. Warm water, cool on. What is that? That's the stream down below that goes to the, got it now, that's real cool. But if you ever have an opportunity, it would be, the worst part of the trip, of course, is the flight. It's a long flight going, but hey, technology, I might not be here, but there's supersonic jets coming abroad, which I think less than 10 years from now, no doubt in my mind, commercial airliners be going 4 hours to Europe. Right now, it's 7 or 8 hours. So that's technology, things change, But I really enjoyed this presentation here I was invited to. Thank Eric and everybody involved. I love the little town of Abbeville, what Sal had mentioned you need to go. And he passed away. We were really close buddies. And Sal, like I said, there was the Mazzelli family, Joe Mazzelli, that started a lot of organizations. You got the Italian Digest, Italian Museum, the Italian Piazza, which they have opera and all this by Partner Street. And Frank, his son, took over. And there's one other port, South Syria, one of those members. And now we have Mr. Charles Marsala. Excuse me. Because it's like any organization, anything you belong to, there's always a handful that actually help, Mr. Piazza.
David, point out on the map where Cefalu is, so they'll know. It's up here.
The temple up above, right in the middle, with you see the columns. That's the cathedral. 1131. Today, I'm friends with the priests over there. I just don't go to confession in that church. But anyway, I've got friends. We got connections in there. My grandfather got baptized there, and the family. That's it, right there. Palermo's to the left, 45 minutes away. It's gorgeous on the northern part of Sicily. Put it like this. Sicily is so small. If we were to get in a convertible, of course, and a bottle of wine and a big piece of cheese and some bread, and leave at 6 o'clock in the morning from the marina, we'd most probably be back around 3 o'clock in the morning, just the coastline. It's small. But up in the mountains, this mountains area, up in the mountains, there's many little villages up in the mountains. So, and like I talked about the education part, it's just that area, almost no ghost towns, because when the kids do grow up, there's not much work for them up in the mountains. They got sheep and things and vegetables and all. But as far as education, you go to Palermo or Catania. And when you get that education, they go on to where they could work. It's usually near the water with tourists and all.
Mr. Matassa.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us an idea of some of the benefits of being in your organization with the burials in the cemetery, which I thought was very fascinating?
I'm glad you brought it up, but besides the festa, and we have a scholarship to Cabrini, the D'Antoni family donated a beautiful mausoleum. If you're a paid up member, you're eligible to go into that mausoleum, which is a great benefit. It's in St. Louis 3 Cemetery, and that's a major asset to have in a society. So if you have an opportunity, it's right across from Cabrini, from the Cabrini School and the church, Esplanade, it's St. Louis 3. And you go in that cemetery, and we have a beautiful mausoleum.
That's been going on for many years, right?
Yes, sir. We had the original mausoleum back in 1890 or whatever, and it's still there, but it's got kind of like, it need a lot of work to it. So the D'Antoni family came up with that mausoleum we needed and built a new beautiful mausoleum.
And if you're a member, you can be buried.
If you're a member, you can be buried, and that's the rights. Exactly right. So,
Hey,
yes, sir.
how did the society begin, and who were the members that put it together?
Society began in 1887, and the main thing for the Contessa and most all your other organizations will help their people coming into America. They couldn't speak the language. They were maybe sick. They needed work. And so we formed these organizations. Cefalu was one of them. Contessa, most all your organizations were formed to help to give the benefits of their people coming in. to a strange country. But then America was the land of opportunity, and we all know that. And when I talk to people about Sicily, and it's lovely, I said, but you know, there's no country like America, which is true as far as I'm concerned. And things never stay the same. But Sicily is so beautiful and laid back. But then, again, there's so many other benefits we have in the United States of America, like if you get sick and, you know, the benefits of free health insurance in Sicily, Italy. Well, like my cousin said, he had cataract surgery or something. He said, man, I had to go to, I think Messina, which is by the strait right here where the boot is, at the bottom, to the boot. And this thing is called, like, you know, you pay a part of a fee for a specialist, or for free surgery, you might have to wait 3 or 4 months, but it's free, right? So things like that. In America, we have things a little different also in other countries and other parts of the world. But it's old school type, you know, the technology, they still have it, of course. And the people meet every part of any little village you go to, there's a piazza, that's a square. That's where everything's at. People you want to meet, contact people, whatever it might be, but usually the city hall is in the piazza. Then Cefalu has a beautiful piazza right in front of that cathedral. And what you find in piazzas is restaurants and places like that, like a courtyard. So, like I said, it's gorgeous. If you have an opportunity, it's 6,000 miles away. It's another world by itself. I joke with people to an extent and say it's like the Twilight Zone. You know, this place is for real. You know, no crime. Come on. Yes, ma'am.
I remember when I went there, they called it the Pearl of the Mediterranean.
Well,
That was one of the
Sicily is the largest island in the Mediterranean.
But Cefalu itself.
Well, like Rick Steve said, Rick Steve's the #1 travel agent throughout the world, and he said it. You know, Taormina is beautiful, a lot of movie star stuff there, but you got to come down to the beach. You have to walk down. I don't know how far down to get to the beach. I've been there, but most of Sicily, the waterline has little rock pebbles on the sand. Cefalu is one of the few places with like rock pebbles. So imagine being on a beach in a cove surrounded by mountains. Extremely gorgeous. But yeah, you know, it's different. It's extremely, I think Rick Steve said it was his pick. It was his #1 place. And he just happened to stay where I stay at. It's on the main street. There's a terrace. There's not a lot of lifts. Excuse me, in Europe and Italy, lifts is an elevator. There's a lot of steps. And it's beautiful, it's marble, but it's steps, okay? So I go to a place, it's on the main street in the historic district. There's a terrace, a beautiful terrace at the top. You eat breakfast or whatever you want to do. It's really pretty. And there's different definitions of beauty wherever you got throughout the country and the world, wherever you go. But yeah, Cefalu is, like you said, the jewel of the Mediterranean. Okay, Eric?
And they'll take some questions at the end of our program, and of course, we have some food that we'll serve too. So, but thank you so much. Want to introduce our next guest?
So our next guest he was coming up first, and he puts me on a burner, you know. Anyway, this man, like I told you about Sal Serio, was a legend in the community of New Orleans, and Joe Mazzelli. And to pick up that torch, very few in between do. When you see a marker, for instance, a historical marker in the French Quarter of New Orleans, but not just the French Quarter, this man had a lot to do with it, okay? Because you just can't go get a permit and all. You got to pay for this monument, this marker, whatever. And you got to go through the technicality of the political, whatever you want to call it, to put them in. But Mr. Charles Marsala is the man that's doing it today. So with a good round of applause, he's the Federation of the President of the Southeast. It's Charles Marsala.
Well, thank you, everyone, and it's great to be here. I've came out here about 4 years ago, and I was on a mission. You guys know, anybody heard of Iron Eyes Cody? A couple of people have, and you know, that was one of the great commercials of all time for the environment. We keep America beautiful. As it turns out, you know, he's from this area, and his real name was Oscar de Corte. He's a Sicilian, and he came out here to do rice. I happened to follow and tracing him down. I was in Hollywood at the cemetery, And I found his grave, and it was covered with pennies. And while I was there, Lena Prima called me, Louis' daughter, and she said, during COVID, she said, Charles, I want to do a variety show. Would you be my Ed McMahon? I'll be Johnny Carson. And I said, well, Lena, I'm right now at the cemetery, and I see the grave with all the pennies on it. And she starts to cry, and she says, that's my favorite song with my dad, Pennies from Heaven. And many people called my dad the Chief because he looked a lot like Oscar, and he was called the Chief. So Lena and I launched a series of 17 episodes on Louisiana culture during COVID. It was a lot of fun. And then we ended with It's a Wonderful Life, with the Italian version of it. If you ever watch it again, pay a lot of attention. Because in the movie, Mr. Potter says to George Bailey, you hang out with a bunch of garlic eaters. And if you think about it, Martinelli gets a house, opens a business. The movie is really about the Sicilian experience, the Italian experience, coming to America, working our way up, getting our businesses, and helping our fellow man. And George Bailey is actually a guy named A.P. Giannini, who opened Bank of America. It was called Bank of Italy when it first started. And during the earthquake of 1906, he rushed his bank as everything was burning, got the cash out, and was loaning money the way George was loaning money during the bank run in the movie. So it's all based on Italian life. It's a wonderful life. Next time you watch it, think about those things. All right, so I'm gonna be going quick here. We'll take questions, later. But what I want to tell you is right now, Italy is in a resurgence with America. I get to travel the country because I represent our state at the national level. I was in LA. The Italian Air Force came to America for the first time in 30 years. They have the largest Air Force Performance Act. They have 10 jets. They fly with the American flag. The ship America Vespucci was there. Italy has launched so many programs right now to be proud of. That it's a great time for our culture, and especially with your festival coming up, to be part of who we are. One of the things we talk about Sicily being, needing resources. Well, one of the things that they have is the EU has now put up $5 billion to help Sicily because they feel that Sicily is the gateway to Africa and other countries the way it used to be. So the EU wants to develop Sicily, and we now can work from home. So the lower half of Italy, the boot, used to be part of Sicily. That was the kingdom of the two Sicilies. And Bari is where a lot of this is going on, where they got all this money to give those jobs because they find that people work hard. Once they're educated, they give them a reason to stay. So we're trying to rebuild our youth. And earlier this year, we launched 3 years ago, and we had our annual meeting in Florida of the Italian Future Leaders. It's a way of taking our culture and getting the next generation enthused about it. There were 225 young Italians, 21 to 35, that went to Florida. The Florida Panthers are owned by an Italian named Vinny Viola, who won the Stanley Cup this last year. And the Viola family housed us, and we all went to the game one night. We're fortunate that a young man named Patrick Campisi from Baton Rouge is actually the president of that group. And we're really trying to establish that Louisiana is going to show how to transfer our culture to the next generation and have them inspired. We're doing a lot of programs in that regard. Backing up, going to the other side, we came here because of lemons. The Sicilian lemon realized it would prevent scurvy, and they started shipping it from Palermo into New Orleans. People started staying. And then as the Civil War was coming along, there was about 1,200 Sicilians here. And they happened to be from Sardinia, most of them. And there had been this Crimean, like we know right now have the Crimean War going on. There was the Crimean War, and that's Ukraine, in Russia. And all the best soldiers, called the Barsigliari, had come to New Orleans. So when the Union Army came in, they turned to the Barsigliari to defend the city, to prevent it from looting and fire, so that the French Quarter still exists today because of those soldiers. And there's actually a mausoleum in their honor in Metairie Cemetery. You were asking about the mausoleums. So I met with the Italian embassy 2 weeks ago about trying to get some funds to restore that cemetery. We, in line with that, as the war was getting ready to start, there was a guy named Major Wheat, and he was over there. Major Wheat says to Garibaldi, who's unifying Italy, look, you got 12,000 prisoners. Can I take some back to New Orleans with me? Because he was actually from New Orleans. So he does, and when he comes back, those guys fight, and they fight so hard. One time in one battle, they ran out of bullets, and their lieutenant said, start throwing rocks. Okay, they held a bridge from the Union Army by throwing rocks at these guys until they got backup ammunition. Those guys became known as the Tigers. Anybody thinking the connection I'm making here? The LSU Tigers, you ever heard of those guys? They are Sicilian, okay? So when you go to Tiger Stadium, think Sicily. Now, also when you hear that fight song, when they play Hold That Tiger, all right? That was written by Nick LaRocca. So when they play the fight song, you're in a museum of Italians, okay? Now, and I'll add a few other things here with this. As I've been researching everything, what I found was before Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic, a man named Francesco Di Pinedo, he flew a plane and landed a seaplane in the Mississippi River in New Orleans 2 months before Lindbergh. How about that? And the deal was that was during Prohibition. We flew it in style. That's what Italians are known for. We take engineering. We're not just going to cross the Atlantic. We're going to cross it. He had a co-pilot. He had a mechanic. They had cheese, wine. They had a stereo. They're playing opera. All right. So as he's coming in to land the plane, he realizes they got all this wine left over, and it's Prohibition in America. So he gives the controls to the co-pilot so he can finish off the wine. Now, another one I'm working on right now is World War II. And I just finished rewatching the movie Patton, and how Patton, he lands about right here in a town called Gela and Licata, down here on the coast. And he goes up, and then he goes to Palermo, and then he cuts to Messina. So before Patton did, what Patton was doing at Montgomery was landing over here, and he had to go up the coast. But FDR knew, and he'd already told Churchill, we got Italian Americans, and they're patriotic, and they're American first. They will help the American army get to Palermo. They will help us in Sicily. Britain didn't have that luxury. So Patton lands, and he is all his way through. Well, as I'm researching more and more of this, the guy that helped Patton the most is a guy named Lucky Luciano. True story, this is one of the books. I'm reading 4 books on this right now. Lucky got pardoned after World War II for all the work he did to help America win World War II. Lucky had already told all his Sicilian friends, and when they were showing up, there's another true story. Guy pulls up in a tank in a town called Valabra, opens the lid of the tank, and he holds up a yellow flag with a black L on it. The mayor says, I know who you are, come with me. He gets his men, they go to the German intelligence office, they kill all the Germans, they go in there, they blow up the safe, and on day 1, they had the German codes and where the mines were and everything else, and they brought him back to Patton, so he knew where to go, how to get to Palermo. I mean, what a thing that we did, and we don't get much credit for that. So I'm trying to do these documentaries, telling the story of our success and all the contributions we've done to America that we're really not getting credit for. This year, and I'm gonna skip randomly a little bit, fortunately the crew of Bacchus this year has a float, which is gonna honor the Sicilian Festival and Independence. The theme of Bacchus is festivals. It's a beautiful float. And I just sent a note to the head of Bacchus, can we kind of keep that float and make it a float we use all the time to promote our Italians, because it shows the Sicilian cart, it shows a lot of other things on there, what would we be proud of? So it'd be great to tie that in as we go forward. It was said that I am president of the Federation, so I should say a little bit about that. 50 years ago, there were about 30 clubs in Louisiana, a club in Birmingham, a club in Biloxi, a club in Pensacola. The Federation was formed, and I go back to meetings nationally, and we got a dynamo man running it. It's called the Conference of Presidents of Major Italian American Organizations. So the Federation is one of those organizations. The guy I report to is Basil Russo. Basil's sons are Anthony and Joe Russo, who make the Marvel movies. And Basil is a really amazing guy. He was the one behind creating the Future Leaders. But we're also doing a lot to save Columbus Day. And if you go back and read 4 years ago when Joe Biden issued his first Columbus Day proclamation, which by law the president has to, FDR, that was done under FDR, mainly because of the Knights of Columbus. The first one said, I got to issue this proclamation, so let's talk about the atrocities that happened after Columbus. Well, we got together and we pounded the White House. In the last 3 years, the proclamations have all said the contributions of NATO, everything else Italy does for America, and that Columbus Day really got it starting with the massacre of Italians in 1891 in New Orleans. And then 2 years ago, Joe Biden is from Messina. We went back to the White House and said, you invite everybody else, but you never invite the Italians. So they started inviting the Italians to the White House during Italian Heritage Month. And it was 250 of us that got to go, and after they would speak, we have a little like you have here, but they had spaghetti and meatballs. We're in the White House, and meatballs are rolling down the carpet. You know, it's like really, because there was no place to sit. So you got this plate, And you're looking at all these Italians with the paintings of Jefferson and everything else, eating spaghetti and meatballs. It was really a thrill to be part of that. We are putting up markers. We have one, Victor Sciro, was a mayor of New Orleans. He got the Saints. He got the Superdome built. He had Poydras Street built. Many FEMA. He created FEMA. So when we had FEMA from our hurricanes, there was no FEMA until Hurricane Betsy. And Victor went to D.C. and got Lyndon Banks Johnson to come to Louisiana and said, we need help. And it's not just going to be this or this or this. That's when FEMA gets started. So, but the Superdome got built, which this year they'll be giving out the Lombardi Trophy. So we think about all our contributions, and the Philadelphia Eagle head coach, he's also Italian. So we might really have a lot going on there, Italian getting the Lombardi Trophy. The other thing I want to say is the Federation belongs to the national group called NIAF, National Italian American Foundation. If you got a child, a student, anybody you know that's in college, they're eligible for a 2-week trip to to Italy. We nominate people and we get one spot a year, 40 kids go. It's a way of getting that next generation involved. They're on this mission where it's funded because the ambassador left his estate to fund this trip. We put up half, they put up half, so it's about a $3,000 trip. And one person from our region a year gets to go. We have been fortunate because they like us, and over the last few years, we've gotten an extra spot. If they only had 35 people from the different regions, they'll call us and give us one. So we've had 8 people go to that trip, and it'd be great to get someone from your region out here on the west part of Louisiana to go. I'm thinking here, I got pretty much, the last thing I would say is this. In New Orleans, how many people have been to New Orleans from here? All right, I'll make it harder. How many people have been on Decatur Street? All right, okay, now the tough question. How many people know who Decatur Street's named after?
Joe Decatur.
Nope. Close. No. All right. So now this is the key. This is the part here. It's named after Stephen Decatur. All right. Now I didn't know that. All right. So Stephen Decatur, who was he? Have you ever heard the Marine Corps hymn from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli? I was in the Marine. I was a drummer in the high school Marine band. I didn't know what I was playing for 1,000 times. The shores of Tripoli is the Barbary Coast Wars, 1804 to 1815. So Sicily was having a lot of people captured and sold into slavery by the Barbary Coast pirates. So then America had the same thing. As they went to America and they said, if you don't pay us $250,000 a year, this is 1904, we will capture your people and put them into slavery. And Thomas Jefferson built the Marines. And first, it was actually when we first became a country. Jefferson was the Secretary of State to Washington. And he sent Washington a text, what are we going to do? You know, a text. And he said, we got no money, we don't have no army, we're going to have to pay it. But Jefferson promised that by the time he became president, we would have a solution. So we built up the Navy, we built up the Marines, and we sent our first ship in, we were just ready to fight. We told them that, go to hell, you're not going to get your $250,000 anymore. So they started capturing our ships. Well, then they asked the Americans, say to the Sicilians, will you help us? So the Sicilians give them bases in Palermo, Messina, and Catania. And they captured the USS Philadelphia. It ran aground. The Libyans put it right in front of Tripoli. Stephen Decatur captures a small ship, but he wants to sail it. The mission is to sail it next to the Philadelphia into the port and blow up the Philadelphia. But to do it, they got to speak Arabic to get into the gates. So they get the Sicilians to run the ship, and the Americans are down below deck. The Sicilian is named Salvador Catalano, and Salvador would end up becoming an American citizen, and he would work in the Navy Yard. It was a very successful mission. And while that mission is going on, Jefferson tells the head of the Navy, he says, look, he says, our U.S. Marine Band doesn't play the music that well. We can do better. Get me some Sicilians. So they go to the Caruso Band in Catania and say, look, will you come back? And one guy says, I'll come, but I got a 12-year-old son. What am I going to do? And they said, he's 12? Okay, we'll make him a Marine too. That guy, 12 years later, became the head of the Marine Band. He served in the U.S. Marines for 47 years. Okay, so we have a great history to be proud of. We're telling that story, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. And thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you. I've got one question. I'm going to ask the first question, and maybe Mr. Lloyd, and you can both think about it before I let you run off. What is it in your mind that is the essential element that helped Sicilian immigrants thrive so well early on in American history to today? What's the secret to the success of the culture?
Actually, I would say what David talked about, the societies and Mother Cabrini. So the Cefalu Society, which honors Mother Cabrini, if you watch that movie parallels the experience in New Orleans. They had typhoid fever, we had yellow fever. Mother Cabrini got an orphanage built there. She went to a guy here named Salvador Pizzotti. He said, I'll give you $7,500. She said, add a zero. So what made us successful is we organized by city, and then you paid the money so that you had a place to get buried, you had an insurance policy to take care of your widow, whatever was going on. But we created a union hall, and those early days, these societies were very tight. There's a row in Metairie Cemetery that you could see. But it was also, and I see your sign here, faith, family, and food. Nationally, they say faith, family, and hard work. And that was what I think where we became accepted was that when we went to America, we just worked our butts off, and the Americans realized how valuable we were to society here. And then it wasn't like we didn't hold any grudges. We let go anything, the lynching. Marsala said, hey, it's over, let's move on. We became Americans, just like they told FDR during World War II. We are Americans. We're not fighting for Italy, we're fighting for America. And I think that was our key to getting accepted, and those values of faith, family, and hard work. And also, somebody else, and actually they've had said our hospitality, which would be our food. So those, I think, are key factors to how we got involved. And I'll add with this, in New York in 1923, they had Babe Ruth there, the house that Ruth built, the Yankees on Murderers Row, Lou Gehrig. The stadium was still empty. So the owner of the Yankees said, get me an Italian on the team. Okay, that was Tony La Russo. And Tony owned several home run records, most ribbies in a game and everything else. He batted 6 behind Babe Ruth. That was Murderers Row. So we were known for producing people into the stadium. We just worked hard.
One more round of applause. Without further ado, we'd like to invite our third speaker, one of our own homegrown, Mr. Lloyd Campisi. Give him a round of applause. Do you want to hold the mic or do you want to talk?
I don't know, I'd rather not, but if I have to, I will.
Yeah, you need to use the mic.
Need to use the mic? I'm the only one that's not a president that talks today. I want to put a face on this. I want to put a face on this meeting and this Sicilian. And the face I want to put on this is my grandmother, Rosa.
She's behind you right now.
Rosa was born in 1877. She was born in Cefalu. She was the first daughter of Giuseppe Diego Catanisi. And her mother was Teresa Garbo. And this small island of less than 10,000 acres, miles rather, and is a confused part of history that's taken place. And as a Sicilian, I've tried to figure it out. And the best I can understand is that in the 1100s, the King of France, Roger II, announced that Sicily would become a kingdom. And it flourished. And it was prosperous. And the people were engaged in all sorts of commerce. And they were very civilized and very educated. But hard times fell upon the Sicilians, so much so that Rosa's mama and daddy had to tell her that your daddy's leaving. She's 10 years old. Your daddy has to leave because there's nothing for him to do here. There's no work. There's not enough food for us. There's not enough anything for us here. And we're poor, malnourished, and there's so much disease. Enough that a man, 30-something years old, left a 32-year-old wife and 3 children, Rosa, Salvatore, Sam, and Giuseppe, Joe, and left for America. He came to America to work. He came to America to work in the cane fields in Washington, Louisiana. And he went there because they were hiring people. And he stayed there 2 years working before he could send for his children and his wife. And finally he does. And they come to America. My grandmother's now 12. Both she and her mother, Teresa, and her 2 brothers, one of them was 7, the other one was 4, go through the immigration system in New York, get to New Orleans, and get to the plantation in Washington, Louisiana, a sugarcane plantation. There, they set up a life in the new world. My grandmother didn't speak English. She didn't speak French. She didn't speak Spanish. She was helped by her family and the other family of Sicilians like the Cefalutana Society and all of the others who recognized what these people were going through and helped them. In the 2 years that Rosa was in the United States, her father dies. During that time, her mother and father have another child in America, Josephine. And they're all in Washington, and Diego's dead. And the question is, how do we get through this? What do we do? Well, one of the rules on the plantation was that the only way you could live on the plantation in one of the slave quarters, because what we were the replacement for the blacks who were cutting the sugarcane and planting the sugarcane. That's what we came to do, because we came here with nothing. And the rule was that the only way you could have one of the houses was if there was a male in the house who worked on the plantation. Well, Teresa had no male in the house. She had a 14-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old daughter and 2 boys in the middle, 7 and 4. Well, the Sicilians are very figure things out. They work things out. We thrive only because of the toughness of the people that we come from. My grandmother had a talk with her daughter, Rosa. And they decided, in order to get a man in the house, Rosa had to get married. And it was pretty much the custom in the old country that marriages were arranged. So they looked for someone, and they found Pietro, later to be called Pyro, Campisi. He was 19. He had never been married. And I saw the records in the courthouse in 1901. In 1901, in February the 3rd, the 2 of them were married. And so they had a house to go to on the plantation. I learned all this from my grandmother. She taught me lots of things. And she had no education. She never went to school. She had to learn English and French and all of those things, and help raise her siblings besides. She gets to Abbeville with her mother, her husband, and her brothers and sisters, and they open up a grocery store, like many of them did. All of this is arranged by the help they got from the Cefalutana Society and all the other Sicilians who were willing to help someone start a small grocery store. Well, the whole New Orleans dock was full of produce and fruits and everything else. All of that eventually gets sent to all of these little country stores all throughout Louisiana. And my grandmother's store, the Piazzas had a store, the Russos had a store. All of the families did, and it was simple. You just convert the front part of your house into a grocery store, and you live in the back. And that's what they did. So I'm growing up, and I want to tell you just a couple of quick stories about my grandmother. I'm about 10 years old, and one day we're sitting out behind our house under the China ball tree, and she always wore a big apron from being a merchant and working at the grocery store, and had deep, deep pockets. And I knew that if I sat there and behaved as a child and answered all her questions and pretended like I was having a good time, that I'd get a treat. And I always got the treat. So one day she says to me, she said, "Lloyd, Shaq, what's the one thing that if you lose, you can't ever get back?" I said, "Well, Grandma, how am I gonna get that treat?" So I came up with 2 or 3 things, and she kept saying, no. So I said, "Oh, and I got it." I said, "Grandma, it's my bicycle. It's my Donald Duck bicycle. If I lose my Donald Duck bicycle, my daddy will never buy me another bicycle." She said, "No, Shaq, it's not your bicycle. It's your good name. If you lose your good name, you can never, ever get that back." That's the lesson, one of the lessons that this uneducated person, no formal education, sewed her own dresses out of the feed sacks that they used to feed the animals, raised chickens and had a cow and a milk cow and had a garden and worked from sun up to sundown every day like most Sicilians did, and to scratch out a living in order to be able to survive and to one day hope that their children and their grandchildren would have it a little bit better than they had it. Another day, I'm sitting under the swing with her, and she says, "How old are you?" This is a few years later. I'm about I'm about in the 8th grade, 8th or 9th grade. And she said, "Shaq, who you dating?" I said, "Well, Grandma, I don't have a date. I don't date." "Oh, sure, but there's any Sicilian girls in your class?" I said, yeah. And I named the girl, and she said, "I knew the family. I worked everything out." I said, "Grandma, and she said to me, and I knew what had happened to her, an arranged marriage. And I said, "Grandma, that's not, no, please." She said, "Don't worry. you get to love them. She lived a long life. She lived until she was 82. She, in her garden, would grow her own tomatoes, and those tomatoes she would turn into the sauce. One day I walked into her house and I said, "Grandma, it stinks in here. What's going on? What's the smell I'm smelling?" "Oh, shit, don't worry about that." I said, "Well, no, what is it? Come see." So we went in the extra bedroom. She said, "Look under the bed." And I said, "There's a box." She said, "Pull out the box." I pulled out the box. It was the tomatoes. She was letting the tomatoes ripen, and she let them ripen to the point in which she would take them and squeeze them through cheesecloth, and then she would cook that down to make the Sunday spaghetti. That woman worked from sun up to sundown, and when she wasn't doing that, she was crocheting, and she was doing handiwork, and she created some beautiful pieces of crochet work. The other story I want to tell you about Sicilians and my grandmother is this, and I'll close with it. She was tough. And I didn't understand why she was tough until I began to understand her history. And how could she be that? She was so tough, and you had to play by her rules, the rules of her house. And the rules of her house to her son, Salvatore, my daddy, was that you marry within the family. Period. No Frenchies. Marry within the family. Well, my daddy fell in love with a beautiful French girl, French and Spanish, a Romero, and he married her. And it upset my grandmother to the point in which she told him, "Out. You're out." And he was out of the house, wasn't allowed back to come see her until I was born. And then it was, okay, you can go now. But that's kind of you want to know how we made it and what's the real? We thrived under the most adverse conditions. And listen, the Sicilian story is the same. There's a Rosa in the French families. There's a Rosa in the German families. There's a Rosa in the Irish families. This is the story of America. This is the story of immigration. This is who we are as a people and how we got to be who we are because of a young girl from Cefalu who was down and out. Her family came to America, and this great country gave her and her people a chance to thrive. So we all should be blessed with that. And I'm a proud member of the Cefalutana Society, and I'm proud to be Sicilian. One other quick lesson, and this is it. When I was in college, I thought I would get smart, real smart, and I would go to the Sunday table. Every Sunday we had Sunday dinner at Grandma's house, and you had to be there, and you had to be there on time, and you knew where you sat, and we always had the same meal. And so I said, and they would speak in their language, and I didn't speak Italian. I said, I'm a big dog at LSU, I'm a smart kid, I'm gonna study Italian. So I studied Italian, and I studied enough, and the teacher helped me prepare a little speech so that I could, and I gave him a little speech at one Sunday dinner, and my grandmother said, "Oh, Shaq, that's not our language." I said, "Grandma, it's Italian." "We're not Italians. We're Sicilians, and you should be proud of it. And I want you to know I am a proud Sicilian. Thank you.
Speaking of proud Sicilians, and we're gonna have a little Q&A in a second. Quick show of hands of the audience here tonight, and I see some people like Mr. Mark Piazza, our mayor for many years here from Sicilian descent. How many of you guys here tonight have Sicilian ancestors? Wow, that's beautiful. Well, one more big round of applause for our three guest speakers this evening. That was tremendous. Very interesting. We have a few short minutes. No, everybody can smell that wonderful food there.
Yes, that's after Mark speaks, and let them know we got all the food opened up. Y'all come eat. We have plenty of stuff y'all to eat, and we welcome all of you.
And speaking of the food, I want to give some thanks. The food here is not normal at our meetings, so we have some people to thank. The Cugini Society, the Blacksmith Shop Committee, the Sicilian Celebration Committee, which is a great Sicilian festival we have here in Abbeville. We highly recommend you attend. Mr. Lloyd Campisi, Trent Roy Catering, thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
Appreciate you doing that. And of course, Miss Debbie Garrow. And by the way, the Sicilian Celebration, mark your calendars, March 22nd. It's really a special event down here in Abbeville by the old blacksmith shop.
Yes, great event. It is. It is.
So we'll take just a couple questions. It's getting late. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
I have a question for you. Yes. I was in college at UL with two Dan Tonys from New Orleans, and he told me some fascinating story about the family and how they got started, and they wound up owning Standard Ship,
Yes.
steamship cruise company. And I think their father was the head of the tropical medicine department at Tulane. You mentioned mausoleum donated by the D'Antonis. Is that the same?
Yes,
family?
that's the same family, D'Antoni. Matter of fact, Sal still living.
Yep.
He's sickly. He's a member of Cefalutana Society. But that's the same family from Cefalu, Sicily. They were in the produce business also, and he donated that beautiful mausoleum in St. Louis 3 Cemetery. Correct.
Another question, Mr.
I have a question for Lloyd. Where was your grandmother's store?
My grandmother's store is where my brother's office is on State Street.
Okay.
The first Teresa Garbo, and they all started off where Champagne's is today, which was Bombi's. They started off there. They moved to. They closed that store down because it was like the house was in front of the store was in front of the house. Okay.
So what was Robbie's, which is now Champagne's? That's the same location?
The same location of Teresa
Yeah,
Garbo's
yeah.
original
Yeah.
when they got here in 1907.
I remember that. Yeah, I do. Not at my time, but I remember seeing pictures of it. Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
We have a question right here. Yes, ma'am?
Was Mama Joe Sicilian?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Mama Joe.
Mama Joe was a Russo.
Russo, yeah, Sicilian.
We have another question from Mr. Sellers.
Not a question, but it's a coincidence. My grandfather came to America with his father and a sister. And the grandfather was 7 years old and the sister was 4 years old. Same age as yours, but from France. But we were cousins anyway.
We have a question from Mr. Judge Edwards in the back.
Are the Palombos Sicilian?
The Palombos.
Actually, we do have some Palombos, members of the Cefalutana Society.
The ones in the Abbeville area, does anybody know the local folks?
I imagine so, but I know the Palumbo family in New Orleans has a Terminex franchise, for instance. That's the Palumbo family I'm talking about.
There's also a mausoleum in Metairie Cemetery to a town in between Cefalu and Palermo that the Palombos restored recently. And the town, I might mispronounce it, is Termina Immerse.
We'll take one more question. Are there any more questions, any thoughts or statements?
Well, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong, you asked about Mama Joe Russo, she was a Garina. And that's how we all kind of connected through sponsorship by the Sicilians that were first here. But she was a Garina, and even though my grandpa was called Papa Joe and Mama Joe, that was a different Mama Joe and Papa Joe. But she was a Garina, Mr. Sam's sister, married Joe Russo. There's a fantastic
family could go to Mama Joe's and buy what they needed.
That's right.
Sunday
That was-
night, and she'd give the kids candy.
That is exactly right, but that's our relationship.
Well, we want to thank, I'm sorry, my wife, Jen.
I was just gonna ask, what was the first Sicilian family that came to Abbeville?
Her question is, what was the first Sicilian family that immigrated to Abbeville? Saparitas?
Well, Lloyd, you can probably say this better than me, but what happened, the immigrants had to have a sponsor. And y'all correct me if I'm wrong. And the Saparitas sponsored our Papa Joe's family, Lloyd, our families. But you had to know someone to be sponsored. And the Saparitas started it all. Then Joe Russo Garina sponsored some others, and then that, because you had to have, whether it was a small society, like now the Cefalu town's big, but they all had to have a sponsor. You had to say where you were going and who you were going with. That's about right, yeah. So that is how we, and again, I can appreciate Lloyd's story, because what happened with all the Sicilian men, they did marry the French. So we were somewhat not, we were, the grandmother, half-breed, you said, okay, we were called half-breeds by that generation. And my uncle, if y'all know Raymond Russo, he's the first generation. He's of our family. He is the last of his brothers in Oklahoma, and he's the last of the Russos here, 91. But yeah, we were awesome. And in fact, my brother and I are the only ones who had Sicilian mother. Because most of the families of the Russos, the Piazzas and all were men, married to French. But mother was one of the few, but then she married a French. We're bourgeois. So that is how the half-breeds were. But it's all part of that society of the Sicilians, and we like to call ourselves Sicilians. That's our thing, rather than Italians.
Well, we want to thank everybody for attending one more time. Round of applause for our guest speakers and all the comments. Thank y'all for being here, gentlemen. Thank you, Lloyd. I can't wait to say this. Let's eat.